Welcome back. You're watching NTV Tonight. Now, the Uhuru Gardens and monuments stand out in its magnificence even from a mile away. On the grounds where the iconic structure stands is a construction of museums and grounds that capture the past and mirror the future of this great nation. On this eve of the year's Madaraka Day, Laila Mohammed takes us into this piece of infrastructure that captures how the country has been in the last 6 years since Kenya received her independence.
2023 will be a significant milestone for Kenya's 60-year history in its existence in this part of Africa, and this has been immortalized and documented in the shape of two spears and a shield that form 33 galleries at the Uhuru Gardens and Gardens here in Nairobi. And this is a place that was built in 1995 by the administration of the then President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi. The iconic Uhuru Gardens monument with the dove in the middle and the hands showing that this country has been united in peace, love and unity. And also a significant milestone is the Kenyans, the three of them, who are holding the flag and really raising it high. And Kenyans have done that significantly in various spheres of their lives. But this piece of history, again, will also be on show for the generations to come in this iconic piece of infrastructure built between 2020 and 2023. And those galleries, now 16 of them have been open. And this is an opportunity to get a sneak peek into how the history of this country has been documented.
The concept derives from our spear, our shield, which are the main features on our coat of arms. A symbol of protection, symbol of unity, and a symbol of defense, not only of nation, but also our freedoms.
These galleries are thematically arranged as was given by the architect.
A place where we shall celebrate the good, we shall see the bad. As it was, it's part of our history, we can't run away from it. And remember our ugly so that we hopefully shall never repeat.
Before walking into the galleries, we begin this journey at the space where an eternal flame burns. On the walls around this enclosure are names of Kenyan heroes and heroines who have died and whose legacies are immortalized in this area, where the flame that burned within their chests to do their best for Kenya continues to burn and shine bright into the future. This is also an altar to the unknown warriors who have died for this nation, many whose passing enabled Kenya to gain internal self-rule, Madaraka, in 1963, with Mzee Jomo Kenyatta as Kenya's Prime Minister, and finally Kenya earning full republic status on June 1st, 1964. As the iconic Uhuru Garden structure peaks majestically above the trees like the giraffes that run across the Kenyan African savanna, in the foreground stands one of the earliest locomotives that snaked its way from the port of Mombasa to the lake port of Kisumu before, during and after independence. That monument, built in the Moi era, stands at the edge of one of the two spears that are the building that houses the museums. Over time, this area that once hosted a Mau Mau detention camp is slowly turning into a beautiful space that, once complete, can be a serene environment for those coming here to seek rest and to learn about the history of Kenya. Once at the entrance to the museums, visitors are reminded of Kenya's status on the World Wonder Posting. The wildebeest crossing on the Mara River every year from the Serengeti in Tanzania is captured in this sculpture that overlooks the main entrance into a museum built on the foundation of this country's history.
The place that shall be the custodian of all our historical, our cultural artifacts, memorabilia of all sorts.
Along the Hall of Witness Gallery, or Handaki la Mashahidi in Swahili, are posted names of those who came before us and whose lives ending mean that this country stands on solid ground to this day. the whole of matters capturing significant aspects like the slavery trade along the East African coast in that time.
We largely are looking at our struggle for independence, starting with the struggle for independence itself.
Documentation about the railway system dubbed the Lunatic Express is also here, a service of transportation that has moved people and their goods from the port of Mombasa into the Great Lakes region for decades. Since its construction, a labor force constituted of African and Indian laborers.
This is going to be a bilingual museum, Your Excellency, giving Kiswahili its center stage.
Other than the documentation of how different communities dressed in the period before independence, the presidential galleries of Kenya's leaders brings one closer to the men they were alongside their presidency. In the Daniel Moi Gallery, his famous rungu and whisk covered in beautiful Maasai beading lay on a glass enclosure. His Bible that we are told he read each night before bed lays open, also with his favorite verse highlighted. The history of the Kenya Defence Forces, right from when under the British colonial administration they were referred to as the King's African Rifles, to how they have become a modernized military that has mechanized infantry battalions within its largest service, the Kenya Army. While much of the tour may be fun and full of interesting things, the gallery on the execution of Mau Mau fighters gives one the chills. Hanging on the backdrop of a green wall are sisal ropes that were a key feature in execution of suspects who had been sentenced to hanging. Before facing the hangman, the victim would be clothed in the white garb that would cover their entire body, even closing off their hands. Their arms would be tightly tied. The head draped with a black cover to bring darkness to an even darker moment in the person's end of life. A wooden coffin that was the carriage of bodies as they were laid to rest after hanging. There were also shackles that bound the prisoners on their hands and feet before heading to hang. A piece of leather bearing a colonial stamp, also a part of a gallery that brings to the fore a really gruesome time in the country's history. The last post before falling into the hangman's noose stands here. The wooden piece of infrastructure doesn't seem intimidating now, but the dim lighting capture the intense moment the victims underwent back in the day.
In this plaza, the soul and spirit of Field Marshal Dedan Kimathi is immortalized in stone as a tribute to his contribution to Kenya's War of Independence.
On the walls are posted newspaper cuttings of how the Mau Mau uprising was documented in the press at that time. It is also here that the house of the country's founding father stands, a home that he lived in and shared moments with his family, including the fourth president of the Republic of Kenya, who, while addressing the question of how life living in the three-bedroomed house in Ishaweri, Gatundu South, was growing up, smiled in a manner to suggest that the home had many beautiful memories while he grew up as part of the first family. The house was delicately assembled and set up just as it was at the time of Mzee Jomo Kenyatta when he lived here.
The bathroom, the floor, the fireplace, and reconstructed it here. Plus the furniture.
The facility stands on 68 acres of land, with the government hoping that a lot more of the tangible aspects of our history will be on display in the future.
So the facility has room for expansion because we realize that even the artifacts themselves will continue to increase. So we have a huge area of land that will be developed as we move forward.
At the moment, the facility remains closed off to visitors as construction of the museum continues. But at the ground, certain events like national celebrations are held here, with about 30,000 people able to sit and follow proceedings from the main dais. For the future generations in this country, the gallery with the names of those who have died and given their service to flag and country in various spheres will be a constant reminder of where Kenya came from 60 years on and 60 years going into the future. And this is the story of the Uhuru Gardens, with Kenya celebrating 60 years of independence. Leila Mohammed, NTV.